People whispered that the Mafia boss's son never cried, never smiled, never spoke, barely breathed like a normal child. But that night, in a quiet Italian restaurant tucked between forgotten alleyways, the boy shattered that myth with one heartbreaking sob that froze the entire room. No one dared move, no one dared look, because upsetting the heir of the Rossi crime family was a death wish. But then, a waitress barely making minimum wage walked right up to him, knelt beside him, and whispered words that made the Mafia boss stand up so fast his chair crashed behind him. "He doesn't need silence," she said softly, touching the boy's trembling hand. "He just needs a mom." And that was the moment everything, every life in that room, changed. The restaurant was almost empty, the kind of Monday night silence where even the candles seemed tired. Emilia Cruz wiped down the same table for the 5th time, fighting the ache in her feet after a double shift. Life had been throwing punches since the day she was born, growing up in foster homes, working 2 jobs, and still struggling to pay rent. But she had a gift: she noticed people. Not in the way most did. She noticed what they tried to hide. At 9:42 p.m., the door chimed, and the air changed. 4 men in black suits entered first, scanning every corner of the room like shadows with guns. The customers who remained stiffened, instinctively shrinking in their chairs as if danger had just taken a seat beside them. Emilia recognized the crest on their lapel pins, a golden serpent coiled around a rose. Only one family wore that, the Rossi family, and behind those guards walked the man himself, Lorenzo Rossi, cold-eyed and feared in 3 countries. He was the kind of man whose footsteps sounded like decisions no one was allowed to question. But it wasn't him who caught Emilia's attention. It was the small boy beside him, dark curls, too long for a rich man's son. Cheeks pale with exhaustion. Hands clenched tightly around a stuffed olive green dragon whose seams were splitting. He looked fragile in a way that felt dangerous, like a glass heart placed in the middle of a battlefield. They were barely seated when the boy's lip trembled. A soft, choke sound escaped him, then another, and suddenly his quiet whimpers twisted into a full, helpless cry. The restaurant froze. A crying child shouldn't have been terrifying, yet for the Rossi heir, guards exchanged panicked glances, as if they'd rather face bullets than a tantrum. Lorenzo tried, awkwardly, to hush him. "Matteo, Figlio, please," he muttered, voice low and tight. "Not here. Not now." But the boy cried harder, loud enough to echo through the chandeliers. Emilia watched his shoulders shake, a sound so raw that it scraped something deep inside her chest. She recognized that kind of cry. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hunger. It was loneliness. The kind kids carry when the world expects them to be strong far too young. Before she realized what she was doing, her feet were already moving. One guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, step back," but Emilia didn't even blink. She knelt beside the trembling boy, her voice soft as warm honey. "Hey, sweetheart." She touched the fabric of his dragon, not him. Never touch a scared child first. "Did your brave dragon run out of courage today?" Matteo's cries faltered into hitching breaths. Lorenzo's chair screeched as he stood. "What are you doing?" But Emilia didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the boy, gentle and steady. "He doesn't need to be shushed," she whispered. "He needs someone to understand him." Her fingers brushed lightly across Matteo's knuckles. He didn't pull away. He leaned in. "See," she murmured. "He doesn't need silence. He just needs a mom." The room went deadly silent. Lorenzo Rossi, the most feared man in the city, looked like someone had punched the air out of him. Because nothing in his dangerous world could have prepared him for the truth he'd spent years refusing to face. And Emilia, she had just said it out loud. The moment stretched like a thin sheet of glass, one wrong breath and it would shatter. Lorenzo's guards reached subtly for their weapons, unsure whether to protect their boss or the woman kneeling beside his son. But Lorenzo lifted one hand, stopping them, not out of anger. Out of stunned curiosity. Matteo sniffled, clutching his dragon, little chest rising and falling in uneven waves. Emilia sat cross-legged on the floor next to him, not caring that everyone watched her like she had just stepped into a lion's cage. "What's bothering you, little man?" she whispered. Matteo didn't speak, but he raised his dragon and pointed at its tail, where a thread had come undone. A tiny tear. Barely visible, but to a child who had lost too much, a torn dragon could feel like the universe splitting in half. Emilia's heart squeezed. "Oh sweetheart, you thought you broke something important, didn't you?" He nodded, eyes shimmering. She smiled softly. "Then let's fix it together." For a moment, Matteo looked up at her as if she'd handed him the whole sky. Lorenzo watched, swallowing something heavy. He didn't remember the last time Matteo had looked at anyone like that. Not even him. Emilia took a napkin, folded it neatly, and with the precision of someone who had mended broken things her entire life, mostly herself, she tied the napkin around the dragon's tail like a tiny bandage. There, she said. He's a brave dragon again. And even braver with his new battle scar. Matteo's trembling stopped, his breathing softened, and for the first time that night, he smiled. A small, fragile, world-changing smile. Lorenzo nearly sat back down as if his legs couldn't hold him. You cured a meltdown with a napkin, he murmured, half amazed, half bewildered. Emilia finally stood, brushing off her apron. Cried children aren't problems, sir. They're messages. You just have to know how to read them. The guards exchanged glances. No one spoke to Lorenzo like that, but instead of fury, Lorenzo looked at her with something unreadable, something Emilia couldn't decipher but felt deeply. I want to talk, he said quietly. About my son. About what you just said. Emilia stiffened. Sir, I didn't mean to offend, you didn't. His voice softened, rough like gravel under rain. You told the truth. And in my life, I rarely hear truth. He motioned to an empty seat. Sit with us. Please. The word please from a mafia boss nearly made the chandeliers sway. Emilia hesitated but sat. Matteo immediately leaned toward her, dragon tucked under his arm, as if he had decided she was safety in human form, and as she looked at the broken man across from her and the lonely child beside her, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. A shift in fate. A door opening. A storm finally easing. Lorenzo exhaled, resting his hands on the table. Tell me, he said quietly. Why does my son stop crying with you when I can't reach him at all? Emilia didn't flinch. Because, she whispered, touching Matteo's hair gently, he doesn't just need protection, Mr. Rossi. He needs connection. Lorenzo closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself feel the weight of that truth.